please, please, please stop underfunding your CTV campaigns, right? Now, you ever notice that, you look at certain marketing teams, they'll test out a marketing channel, in isolation, right? Decide that channel doesn't work and then never go back to it, just completely never touch it again. I think CTV might be the best example when it comes to that, because the biggest reason that most CTV campaigns are failing is it has nothing to do with targeting. It's not about creative, it's not about your inventory, it's budget, right? Because what usually happens is you have a marketing team, they've heard about connected TV, maybe they've seen their competitors are investing into it, or their agency recommends it, maybe read through some different industry reports that are talking about the growth in streaming, so they decide, okay, let's test it. But instead of treating it like a real channel and being strategic with it, it almost gets treated like more of a mini experiment. And so they'll carve out just like a small piece of budget, maybe a few $1,000s, and just kind of set it, wait to see what happens. And I think this is where things begin to go wrong. Because if you think about it this way, nobody would ever launch your Google ads and just expect to have like these meaningful results after spending a few $100s. The same thing applies for your LinkedIn advertising, right? You don't launch that LinkedIn and then expect like to have all this great market coverage after only a week or two. And I think this is exactly the problem with how people are approaching CTV, right? Like, you want these very robust enterprise level outcomes, but you're only providing like this pilot level investment. So the reality is that, when you think about CTV, it works best when it has had enough scale in a way that it can create just more meaningful penetration, right? You need enough time, enough reach, enough frequency, enough exposure, because the goal is not just showing an ad. The goal is ultimately just influencing that buyer behavior, right? And so think about it. Okay, well, what's the opportunity cost of underfunding CTV? Well, and I think the part that doesn't get spoken about is that, when a channel, in any channel, is underfunded, it can create a false negative. So once again, the channel, it didn't fail because of a bad strategy, or the strategy was wrong. It fails because maybe the investment wasn't large enough to really even kind of generate a meaningful outcome, or an outcome that can actually be measured. So now what you have is potentially the leadership's looking at the results and they're saying, okay, well, CTV just doesn't work for us. But the truth might be you never gave it a chance to work. And so we have to shift our thinking from, understand that the best companies, as far as with the best results, they don't position CTV as like this side quest, right? They're positioning it as like a real growth initiative. So they're willing to commit enough budget to just generate more meaningful reach. They're giving themselves enough time to collect data. And then most importantly, I think on the front end, they're going to define what success looks like before the campaign ever launches. And if you are, ultimately, if you're measuring the wrong thing, you're always going to draw the wrong conclusion. That's how I look at it. So if you are in the process of launching CTV campaigns, or even before, you launch your next one, just make sure you ask yourself, like, why am I doing this? Am I doing this so I can learn, or am I doing this so I can win? Because to me, those are two very different ideas. If you're only investing enough to simply run a test, then don't be surprised when you get these like tiny test size results, because ultimately I think it's just a major mistake to not put enough resources, not put enough budget behind CTV, right? The mistake's not launching it, is underfunding, period. So, because ultimately no channels are really failing when they're given a true opportunity to perform and a true opportunity to succeed, but they're failing when they're expected to, prove themselves before they've really had a chance to. So I think that's a lesson that it, applies to CTV, but it really applies far beyond as well. So those are my thoughts today. Hopefully this has helped someone. If you are in the process of launching CTV campaigns, or even in consideration, feel free to reach out. We'd love to have an exchange. But until then, have a great one.